This is the MOJO, the Meaning of Life and Business podcast, where life and business intersect. Hosted by Jennifer Glass, CEO of Business Growth Strategies International and BGSI Coaching. We are dedicated to your success. Hello and welcome to another episode of MOJO, the Meaning of Life and Business. On today's program, we're going to be talking about podcasting with a purpose. Podcasting, for those of you that are listening to this show, know that podcasting is a really great way to reach people that are trying to learn new ideas, learn concepts, find ideas out there that can possibly help them grow their business, learn different mindset hacks, all sorts of different ideas that are out there with podcasts. When you also have an idea of operating with purpose, though, it becomes an entirely different story. And knowing what you're trying to deliver to your audience, whether it's through podcasts, it's through video like you may be watching us right now, it may be through different medium, but when you're operating with purpose, things really are dramatically different. And so before I bring on our guest, I wanted to tell you a little bit about Mike so that you know why he's really such a great guest, and we'll go from there. So our guest today is the founder of Social Chameleon, a podcast production, distribution, and content agency. He leads with a service above self mentality, seeking ways he can make a positive change within his community and in the world. He is the host of Mic'd Up, a podcast that showcases inspiring entrepreneurs, award-winning authors, thought leaders, business and mindset coaches, peak performers, entertainers, and other talented individuals who join the show to share their personal stories and deliver key insights to provide you, the listener, the ammo needed to level up and achieve your greatest dreams. Welcome to the show, Mike DiCioccio.
Thanks, Jennifer. Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for being on the show, Mike. So let me ask you, you've been in the podcast game now for quite some time. Can you tell us how you actually got to where you are right now, though? Because being with all of these incredible people that have been on your show, and the peak performers, the speakers, the entertainers, the authors, thought leaders, to get on a show like yours, you had to be somewhere first. So Can you tell us a little bit about what your backstory is and your journey to getting to where you are right now?
Yeah, appreciate it. I'm super amped up to be here, and thank you to everyone who's tuning in, watching on YouTube or listening. My goal for being here on the show is to share this story to help anyone who's in a spot right now that's looking to level up, as you mentioned in the intro. So I'm going to share my story and hope that you can apply it to yourself as you're listening and watching this to say, hey, how can we take this information and use it, right? So to answer your question, I've been podcasting with my own show since November 4th of 2019. I remember the exact day. I remember the moment very well, with my friend Jackie Roach, who is actually someone who at the time we were working a lot together at Social Chameleon. She was working with us as a graphic designer. And I just shared my passion and love for podcasting, and I was helping a lot of our clients at the time. So just a little back it up, Social Chameleon started off as a media and marketing company, and then eventually transitioned into a podcast agency that it is today. It was not that in November of 2019. So she was kind of like, hey, you're helping everybody else build their brand. You're helping everybody else like launch their product and service and get it out there into the world. What about you? Like you can do this. Like you should be doing this. And I was always the person that was like encouraging everybody else. And I was very confident in myself, but it was one of those things where I wasn't even thinking about it. I was just thinking about helping everyone else. So she encouraged me to start. And I said, hey, thank you so much, Jackie, for encouraging me to do this. For that reason, I want you to be my first guest on the show. And I interviewed her, and she has an incredible story. And if you guys want to go back and listen to episode 1 of Mic'd Up, you can do that to learn about Jackie. And she also is on, and don't ask me the episode number, but she was on like 100 or so episodes later, and I kind of like brought her back on to talk about the new things that she's doing. So that's how I actually got started with episode 1. But previous to that, I first was someone who consumed podcasts a lot. So before I became an entrepreneur, I was actually in sales and doing a lot of driving around from either office to office or client, kitchen table to kitchen table. And in some cases, I was even the store manager at a company, and I would go help out other stores open and things like that. And I remember doing a lot of driving. And I'm a musician, so I love music. I love to listen to music in the car. But I started to change that to the university on wheels, which is exactly what podcasting can become if you do it right. So I'd be driving, I remember one time, to Pittsburgh from Buffalo back and forth. That's like, 4.5, 5 hours of listen time, of windshield time. And I remember listening to like some of these incredible podcasts back in like 2016 or so, when it really hit home for me that I'm learning a lot through this medium. And I fell in love with it. I also like to read, and I like to engulf as much information as I can to consume it and then use it in business in some way. And I did that when I was a sales rep. I take this information. How can I, this $24 book, how can I turn it into $1 million idea? That was always my mindset. But a lot of how I think and operate today, and the gratitude I have in everything in life, really started with changing the way I think, and podcasting is what did that. And then I told you about how I actually started my own show, but I don't want to fail to tell you kind of the connecting piece of listening to my first podcast, being inspired by them, and starting was that a friend of mine, Dave Mamano, who's out in Rochester, New York, he was podcasting before I was. He was already at this point when we met, a successful podcaster. He had like 25,000 downloads at the time. And I was like, okay, cool. You got like a show that's really, doing well. And he asked me to produce it. And I was like, well, I have a media production background. I went to Buffalo State College for media production, but I never produced a podcast. So I said, there's going to be a learning curve, and I've never actually distributed one. So I'm going to have to kind of YouTubed it to figure it all out. And working on his show, I did like 50 episodes or so as his producer. And then that was the moment when Jackie was kind of talking me into starting my own show. And I did have this heart tug, actually, where I felt like it was God in the universe saying, I was really open. I was surrendering, saying, put me in position to do something with my life. I want to help other people. This isn't all about Mike being successful. I really do want to help other people. And I got this tug of like, podcasting is the way you can do that. You can reach so many more people instead of just the people I was having coffee with, which I love those experiences. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. Everybody can be the fly on the wall to this beautiful conversation that we had. I would go to a coffee meeting, and I'd go my merry way, and they would leave. And then I'd be like, man, that conversation was so good. It's a sin that nobody heard it, except for the two of us. So that, plus the experience I just told you about, plus Jackie's moment of encouraging me, is how I got into it. And then fast forward now, close to 3 years later, I have a podcast agency where I've launched over dozens of podcasts for clients. People have hired me to coach them through podcasting. And a lot of people who get started say, I don't have time and energy to do all the post-production editing and all that good stuff that some people enjoy doing, like myself and the team. We're a little crazy. We enjoy that meticulous editing. And we do everything for them. So our tagline is podcasting done for you. And we love it. So Social Chameleon became a media and marketing company at first, and transitioned and pivoted, and has been successful, thankfully, throughout the pandemic. We've been blessed to be able to operate, and we're doing better today than ever. We're fully remote. So we don't only help people that are in our neck of the woods, we actually help people all across the world.
And that's a great story, and I love how you also said University on Wheels for listening to podcasts, because it's really important to think about it in that perspective.
Yeah.
There's so many amazing shows that are out there that really give you the power. And I think that it was on the iTunes network that Apple was offering even university courses through the iTunes platform that you were able to listen to actual lectures given by the professors as they were teaching their own classes. So being that fly in the room or the fly in the wall, listening to some of these amazing lectures that these professors were giving on a whole host of topics, podcasting really can be an incredible way to gain that education. One thing, though, that I would just note is if you are listening, make sure that you are checking with your own experts if there are specific questions that you have, because certain ideas may be presented that may or may not be valid for your individual situation. So check with your proper person and just confirm that that'll work for you. But getting back, though, Mike, to getting started with podcasting. So like you said, so many people are concerned, oh my God, I've got no time. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have the right tech. I don't have whatever it is. If you were, let's start with the tech before we jump into the other side. Is there anything that somebody needs to have to start doing a podcast that they can say, well, I can't do it because I don't have this?
Yeah, there's really four main components, time being the first one, which obviously either you have the time or you don't, or you create the time or you hire someone to take care of it in the time that you don't have. So that's the first one. Expertise. People either have the expertise or they don't in editing and video production and content creation for social media, which you're going to need to promote your show. It's just like a website back in the day. It's like, okay, you have this beautiful website, but you need to create the pathways so people can find it, because otherwise it's an island by itself. So your podcast, you don't want it to be on an island. You want it to be somewhere that people can easily click through to get to it. So really it's time, it's the expertise, it's resources. Some of these things may be, free, like Anchor is free, or Libsyn is, starts at, I think, $5 a month. I think I'm paying now on Libsyn closer to $40 a month because of the amount of content for my show that we produce every month. So there's different resources that you get familiar with, doing distribution through multiple channels, getting set up on Apple. There is some education that people can either learn by the DIY or hire a coach to teach them how to do it, or they can also hire people. And then really the fourth thing, and this goes for whether or not you hire somebody to manage your podcast or a company or do it yourself, the fourth and most important thing is having a system in place. Like anything else in life, if it's all over the place and scattered and you don't know where your files are, and every time you do an episode, you put something in a different place, or you save the recording to your desktop and there's 457 things you just saved there this week. I've seen some people meet them for coffee and they're showing me something on their computer and I see their desktop is just, thousands of little, and it's like, I get anxiety just looking at it. So without a system in place, it's highly likely, and this is not me just being pompous, this is actually from like facts and studying podcasting and working with people who've launched podcasts. Those that are not organized fail way more than people who are organized. I think that's just a life lesson. That's in the gym. If you don't have a system and you just start working out on random machines and weights, after 6 months, is that person going to be further ahead than the person with a regimented system that they know what they're doing every single day? So I say that because when I work with clients, a lot of times, the shows that are really organized and I'm working with someone on their team that gives us the file on time, we have a title, we have the show notes, we have it all laid out, we can execute at a high level. It's the clients or people we've worked with that are kind of like, I don't know where that is, or I have to try to pull it up, or it's in an email buried from 6 months ago and I interviewed this person, that typically after a few episodes, they're already talking themselves out of it, So having those four things give you the best chance of success.
And one thing that I heard from someone else, just that you have an idea, is that 20 shows is the magic number. So many shows fail before you reach the 20 episode mark. Mm-hmm. And also don't expect it to necessarily be revenue producing immediately. It may take 2-3 years even of doing your show before you may see that direct return. But if you think about it in this perspective, if you are releasing another show every week and people are seeing you and your content and your expertise, eventually you are going to become that quote unquote household name to them, that you will be in a position of being seen as that expert in the particular area that you're trying to be. And so from a purely branding perspective, that can be really helpful. From a business perspective, it can be priceless, to borrow MasterCard's term. But as it relates, though, to getting started, so one of the things, Mike, just to double check, because if anyone's watching us right now on video, you've got the scissor-armed microphone, you've got the earphones, you've got all of that additional tech that you're using. But if you don't have that tech, because right now maybe your budget is a little bit lower, before you're ready to go ahead and invest in the Yeti microphones or the Shure microphone that you have or whatever it is, anything that's stopping you from just starting using Zoom, using Skype, or things along those lines to be able to move forward?
Yeah, great question, and thank you. I want to answer that and then add a little bit more to talk about what you were just talking about before, as far as consistency being so important. Absolutely, consistency is important, and then you talked about kind of like being known in your space, which also is a benefit. There's so many benefits. I recently did a presentation on all the benefits of podcasting, and I can rattle a few off, but really growing your network and being an expert in your, a thought leader in your space are a couple that come to mind. Being able to connect with so many amazing people. I can tell you the best thing that's happened to me in the last 5 years is not only this podcast that I've launched, but it's the people I've met. It's really, that's to me, when I define like the thing that's been amazing about podcasting, isn't necessarily the first thing I think of as the monetization of it. It's the network of amazing people, because that is really the lifeblood of monetizing the show for me. Anytime I meet someone who their first mission is to monetize their show and that's really it, highly likely to fail, because there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of consistency that needs to happen. There's a lot of work, whether it's you doing it or managing someone else doing it, that goes into it. And there is time that it's going to take to monetize it. Even those that have big followings to start with, it's not going to be like you just launch your first 5 shows and you're just all of a sudden, supplementing your major income from a business or something that you're trying to walk away from it. Like, I'll tell you, that helps if you have a following to start with. You can absolutely bounce off energy with your existing followers and get them tuned into the show. And if you do it right and market it correctly, get their attention, and then you're consistent, you have a great chance. But if you're starting and maybe have kind of a smaller following, don't let that discourage you. And you don't need a big budget. Yeah, you can absolutely get started and use Zoom with no microphone. As long as you have a decent built-in microphone that doesn't crackle or sound horrible, you can really get started. I mean, a Yeti microphone's about $100 now, maybe $125. Boom arm is about $50 if you get a nice one. This microphone I upgraded to is $250, $275. And I love it because it's a USB plug-in, so you don't need to run it through many boards. We do all that in post-production. So really, podcasting is there's a low startup cost to it. But I'll say, with that being said, anything you do in life, I feel like there's a balance of these two things, polarizing. Don't let the cost of something get in the way of you starting it. So don't let perfectionism slow you down, is what I'm trying to say. Like, don't wait, I need a $1,000 budget, or I need 50,000 followers on Instagram before I get started. Like, don't think about it that way. Getting started is the most important thing, make sure you're also investing in, you want it to look and sound good. Because like, if you get people to come to your show, hey, Jennifer, like, let's do this. I'm so excited. The show's launched. Like you said, you wanted to hear about it. Once it's out, send you the link, and I send you the link, and it doesn't sound or look professional. And it just, all you're thinking about is the sound of it, because it sounds like it's not as good as the other shows you've listened to. all of a sudden you're drawing attention to it for the wrong reasons. So I would say at a minimum, you want it to sound, good where you're proud of it. Just like anything, like you wouldn't get hired to do something for someone and then just hand in half decent work, right? So I'd say don't let all that perfectionism slow you down, but at the same time, don't just crinkle in a homework assignment and hand it in and expect the teacher to be like, this is decent. Like people have so many options that I would say the barrier of entry is having your show look and sound good. Then it's you, the talent that you bring to it, the interest of your guests, the stories you talk about. That's all the magic that's going to have people coming back for more.
Thank you. And it's really important to keep that in mind. And the other thing also, just to keep in mind also as you're thinking about podcasting, is the idea of audio and video formats for your show. Very often, again, we know about the modalities of learning. People like listening, people like hearing or seeing. They like different ways of learning. And so if you can make your show available in video form as well as audio form, people are going to be consuming that in different ways, and they will be working with you even more as you think about where you want to go. The only thing I would say, and Mike, just correct me if I'm wrong from your perspective, but if you're doing video, you want to be with a clear background or a way that it doesn't look messy. You also want to be, if you're in video, think about a tic-tac-toe box where you've got the 9 squares. You want to be in the middle row or middle column of the box and a little bit of room above your head before the top of the screen. So that way you're going to look normal, I guess is a way to put it. Just think about when you're watching television, you're never seeing somebody way off the screen. It's always like a really good, tight perspective of that individual. And that's how you want to be seen on video. And that's whether or not you're doing a podcast. If you're even just on Zoom meetings or whatever, it's really important just to think how you're actually coming out. And then one other thing is, remember not to be wearing anything that's going to make you look washed out. And lighting is really important too. People want to see the eyes. Everything else, don't worry about as much, but you want to be able to see the eyes because of the know, like, and trust factor. We know if we look somebody in the eyes, we can trust them. If we can't see their eyes, the know, like, and trust factor kind of fades away. So, Mike, that all pretty much makes sense with where you guys see it right.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, lighting is definitely important. If it's really low lighting or poor lighting, obviously the video quality is going to degrade. But it also, again, it's that professionalism of putting your best foot forward. You wouldn't walk into a networking meeting like you just, threw an outfit on in the car ride over, right? Like you'd show up looking good. I'm not saying you have to be wearing a 3-piece suit. I wear t-shirts when I do my shows, but it's, I'm always prepared. I'm always looking good. The hair is done. Like you're showing up like I would be sitting having a cup of coffee with you, right? So I'd say like, come looking like yourself, being ready, but also, how do we capture that? Well, with proper lighting. The headroom thing is great. Couldn't tell you out of 130 episodes I've recorded with my guest. That's one of the things I'm always asking people if they have a swivel, if their camera can move, if they can change the angle of their laptop so it frames them better. You're framed perfectly right now. It's cool. Both of us are very similar in frame. Again, kind of centered up there. You could be a little off to the right or left, but you still want to be somewhere in those lines, like you mentioned. And headroom is great because if you have too much headroom, adding graphics like a lower third with your name and your social media underneath it, if your head is way down there, it's gonna look funny when a lower third comes up. It'd basically be black in your face. So the news framing, like if you're watching the news and you see how somebody is framed from typically waist up to chest up, that's what you're looking for on video. There's different ways you can achieve it, but that's media production 101 is proper framing. I talked about lighting. If you have a decent computer, you don't have to start off with like, a great camera. Like a MacBook has like HD, I think it's 1080 that comes built in. Absolutely. Super affordable options for cameras that you can plug in to your computer, and you can run it, as a plug-in while you're recording. And then instead of using your built-in uh, camera, you can use the external. And again, that's a pretty low barrier of entry kind of situation where a couple $100 you can be, in a much better resolution, especially if you're doing a YouTube channel. Yeah.
Thank you. And that definitely is going to be a lot of help, I think, for people that are listening. And so, again, as we look at the topic of podcasting with a purpose, so I know, Mike, that you have a lot of different things that you've been through in your story. I mean, when we were in the green room earlier, we touched on some of your past and going through the music background and the tell us a little bit more about that story.
Yeah, so I've had a love for the entertainment business, if you will, since I was a little guy. Like I grew up, I was watching when VHS tapes were still around. I was actually my brother and we would record. We would make our own little movies in the backyard with mom's camcorder. It was like the shoulder cameras from the late 80s, early 90s. We would make our own movies. A lot of times we would write screenplays. We had this really old Amiga computer that was probably a decade older than that, from like the 80s, that our uncle gifted to us. And my brother's a really good artist. Even when he was young, he was phenomenal. And he would create graphics on this thing so our names could pop up on the screen, and it would be like hand drawn. It was really cool. We thought we were we thought we were like Spielberg and Zemeckis back in the day. I always use those two guys because we love all their movies. But that's really where it all started. Like, picture 8-year-old Mike running around. I was behind the camera. I was on the camera. Any friend in the neighborhood that was nearby, we'd pull them over and be like, okay, you're going to be the bad guy in the movie. And that's where it all started, where I just loved that part of it, media production. And I pursued it all the way into college. I actually have a media production degree from Buffalo State. And then, I learned, how to capture audio and video professionally, taking courses there, and studied it a lot outside of school because it was a passion of mine. And then when I was going back, also around 10, 11 years old, music was something I felt. I'll tell you, like, I remember when I was a little guy, my sister had this Care Bears record. Okay. That was real. I just recently listened to it because I have a 7-year-old daughter, and I like brought it out, dusted it off, and showed it to her. And she was like, this is for babies. Like, she's too cool for it. I'm like, hey man, when we were kids, this is where our music influence came from, Care Bears. But I remember like that record, and it just had like bass and drums locked in. It was kind of like very Beatles-esque. And I just fell in love with music. And then my mom had a good musical interest too. My dad loved Elvis. My mom loved the Beatles. She also had a Boston cassette. So we had a cassette record player from the 80s. Excuse me. And when our parents were basically doing whatever they were doing, it was get your hands on whatever you can. So I'd be listening to Boston, and then like Led Zeppelin and the Beatles. So I grew up with a lot of great music influence. And the thing that just came naturally to me was banging on pots and pans. And then once I found out that you can actually take an instrument in school, I'm like, wait a minute, you could play the drums in school? Sign me up. And I just played every band that had percussion in it. I was in it, from concert band when you're a little guy to high school. I did jazz, marching band. I even did orchestra. I'm like, if there's percussion in it, sign me up. So I loved that. And then on my 18th birthday, I played my first show outside of a school situation. It was at a club called Mohawk Place in Buffalo. My first show at a bar, and we did really well. And did that for about, I'd say, 7 or 8 more years, playing in different rock bands in Buffalo, and kind of traveling a little bit in the local area. Absolutely loved it. Probably my greatest talent is playing the drums. And now I do it in my worship group at church, and I absolutely love being a part of worship. And I do believe in God, if you couldn't tell, and I love giving back. It's like a thank you for blessing me. I'm serving. And that's why podcasting with a purpose is the topic of today's conversation, because When I'm podcasting, it's not about me, it's serving the audience. When I'm playing my drums, it's not about me, it's about serving the people in that auditorium who are connecting on a different level. And I'm someone who's helping that process take place. Very much so serving. And of course, I get fulfillment from it too, but in an unselfish way. And I think that really quality podcasters, influencers, they realize that it's not just about them. It's about the people that they're inspiring, connecting. And I don't know when my end date is, but my goal in life is to make and to leave this planet. I came in 1986, right? That's when I was born. Whenever my end date is, if I can say that there's some people, handful of people, a billion people, a billion people, whatever the number is, that are I impacted them in a positive way, right? So whether it's listening to the show, listening to music, having a conversation with me one-on-one like you are right now, if I can leave people better than I found them, that's fulfilling for me. There's no money that's tied to that. Does money come from it? Yeah, now I get to podcast, I get paid for it, and I love doing it. But at the end of the day, when my clients are growing their following and doing things that they love to do, and they're inspiring their audience, that is now connected to why we serve. And it's all full circle. Feels so good. You can get compensated properly for it. Everybody wins.
I completely agree with you on that, and I love the Care Bear is just too cool for that. That's for babies. Yeah.
She's
I
too
love
cool.
the Care Bears growing up.
You probably had the same record.
We're sharing and sticking out their chest and having their rainbows come out. Yes. Child of
I remember
the 80s
that birthday
here.
party very well. My sister she was born in 82, so she's 4 years older than me. All of her girlfriends, she was probably, if I was maybe 3, that would be 89. So she was 7. So she was about Isabel's age, who's now too cool for this record, my daughter. But my sister, when she was 7, this record was on, and I remember they had like Pin the Tail on the Donkey, and they had this like you had the clothespin to drop it in the little glass jar. And it's funny because it was like they're like 12 7-year-old girls, and I'm the younger brother, and we have another brother. I don't remember if he was even around, but I was just trying to mix myself in there, just hang out, try to hang out. And I just remember that record playing, and just a moment of being a youngster where music started to influence me, the beat, the way it made you feel, the bass, the drums. And then once I discovered the actual albums that we had at our house, it was like I never looked back. I just fell in love with it.
Yeah, and so let me ask you, Mike, one of the things that you mentioned about the giving back, about the being there to help others, that's got to come from a position of gratitude that you have, that you're feeling grateful in terms of where you are, what you've been given, like you said, and that you're giving back. So when you think about a mindset of gratitude, what does that mean, though, to you, other than just giving back through your music, giving back through the conversations? What does it mean?
I love the setup there. I don't know if that was intentional, but the thing that I do end all my shows with, and it's all over on my social media, is be great. That's what the BG is for, be great. And the second BG is be grateful. You can see it on the t-shirt if you're watching this on YouTube. Be great and be grateful. What that means to me is anything you do in life, whether you're a janitor and you're not where you want to be in life, but you're looking to like get out of that situation potentially, or maybe you do enjoy it. Maybe it's just you like to do that kind of work or whatever. Or whether you're a musician or a podcaster or you're an insurance agent, it doesn't matter what it is that you're doing, but be great at it, right? Like if there's an experience that you're creating, have the best experience possible. Don't have a subpar, half-assed, mediocre. That doesn't inspire you or the people that you're working with. Be great at it. And look, you maybe just like, hey, it's my first day taking piano lessons. How do you expect me to be great? What I mean is have a great mentality and mindset and going into that lesson saying, I'm going to learn as much as I can. So that's the be great side of it. It's a mentality and mindset. The grateful side of it is once you come to life with that idea of I'm looking for greatness, and that's what's inspiring you behind your actions, then, when you wake up in the morning and go to bed at night, be grateful and mindfully either write down or take a mental note of those things that happen throughout the day that you're grateful for each experience. That Jennifer had me on the show today. After this, I get to talk to my team. The fact that I have a team, the fact that I have great team members. I talked about my daughter every day. I remind myself how grateful I am to have a beautiful, healthy daughter, my own health. I have a beautiful relationship with my mother, my sister, my brother. We all are keeping close connection. I realize not every family has that. Those are things that easily can get taken for granted. I don't take anything for granted anymore. I drive to go get a coffee, come home. That's a super simple thing. I went to the post office earlier today to check the P.O. box, got a coffee on the way home. I remember pulling into the driveway with gratitude, like, you know what? I was able to do that. I was able to just get there back and forth. Some people don't have a car. Some people can't afford the gas prices. Being able to grab a coffee, like it's in the budget, that kind of thing. Those simple things, I don't take any minute task for granted. And then the big things, obviously, you're extremely grateful for. But I talk to my daughter about this all the time, is that waking up and going to sleep in gratitude, when you think about it, it really hits different. Like you really think about your day and your time spent so much differently when you're actually mindful about it. And the other thing I've learned, I've studied gratitude. And that's why I actually created a whole clothing line, these BGBG t-shirts you could sell. I'm not doing it for the money. All the money gets donated anyways. But I have be bold. I have a be kind t-shirt. Obviously be great and be grateful. So it's a mindset. And then the last thing I learned that I want to share that I learned about gratitude is that when you're actually in a state of true gratitude, thinking about something that you absolutely appreciate to the fullest, it's impossible physically for us to be in fear at the same time, to be scared, to be hurting. Like we can escape if you have some underlying things that are going on, depression, if you will, when you actually physically are feeling gratitude, not just saying, hey, I'm happy, I had a nice time, the sky is blue. If you're really grateful that it is and you feel that, then absolutely it's real. So if somebody's having a hard time kind of with gratitude or understanding exactly what I mean, look it up, check it out. There's amazing books about it. I've interviewed some phenomenal people who have gratitude journals and all kinds of cool stuff. But that is how much I think about it on a daily basis and live it and preach it, because it is something I believe in.
And that's definitely a really important point, is being grateful, like you said, having that journal or a way just making a note to be grateful. But Mike, let me ask you, if somebody's interested in working with Social Chameleon, and I know you've got a bunch of different plans that you offer to allow people to really experience what Social Chameleon can do for them, how it can benefit them in their business. Can you tell us a little more how they would get started with you? And I understand that for our loyal listeners, you also have a special offer that you'd like them to know about to get started with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you mention this interview, I will take care of you as I would normally, but I'd offer you a discount on the services as well. There's really 4 things we do. I kept it really simple because originally I had way too many options and plans. We can always customize something for you if you don't fall into one of the 4 options that we have, of course. Like if you have if it was ice cream and there's a flavor that you want us to mix or something, yeah, we're happy to do that. But really the 4 are simple. It's the Pro plan, which is audio only. So some shows are audio, post audio and video, and we take care of everything head to toe on it, cover art, show notes, distribution, getting you set up, that whole thing. And it's weekly shows. So we say up to 5 shows produced per month. Most months have 4, some have 5. So we do weekly shows, up to 5 releases per month. And then that same format holds true for the next level up, which is influencer, which then gets into audio and video. And then at that level, we also do the social media content where we're doing videos with subtitles and things that you can put on your Instagram Reels or your Facebook stories, Instagram stories, TikTok. And now we launched recently a 3rd plan, which is the Elite plan, which helps you with guest sourcing There's a lot of time and energy that goes into getting guests on your show, scheduling them, emailing them, even identifying who you want to get on the show and having somebody actually behind the scenes working towards that goal. And it's everything else we talked about included. And you get even more content created for you within that plan. And then, so those are the 3 plans. There's really 3. The 4th one is a do-it-yourself 3 sessions of coaching with me. It's one-on-one with me. And it's to teach you everything you need to know to get started and make sure you're starting and stepping off with that, planting that foot firmly on the ground so you can start your podcast confidently, having everything ironed out that you need. So you're not really guessing and hoping. It's actually coming up with a strategic plan to get started. So those are the 4 things right there: pro, influencer, elite, and then do-it-yourself coaching.
Thank you. And so, Mike, before we end our show today, what's your final thoughts for the day?
Hey, my final thoughts today are, if you haven't gotten started, get started. If you're like me, kind of get started and figure the rest out later. I'm not saying that that's the best strategy for everything. I like that Jennifer earlier said, kind of a disclaimer at the beginning of the show, like, hey, everything we talk about, you don't have to do these things verbatim, step-by-step, word for word, what Mike says or what I say. Everybody has their own kind of process that works for them. But if you haven't gotten started and you hate the fact that you haven't got started, don't let all this noise that's kind of holding you back, whether it's societal or family or whatever, or someone that is telling you how to live your life or what your dreams can or cannot be. Please get true to yourself and tell yourself, if not today, when? And I could do it in 5 years. Why not get started today and work towards something? The other thing I'd say is, if you don't have a clear understanding of what your goals are, like literally down to either the dollar amount or a physical goal, something you want to obtain, or someone you want to meet, or whether it's a person you want to interview, if it's not written and if it's not something you focus on, the likelihood of it happening is much lower. The easiest way I can kind of explain that is, if you give me 2 people and you tell them both to end up at a location, one person has a roadmap to get there, the other person doesn't. You explain the location to both people, they have to go find it. Who's going to get there first? The person, obviously, with the roadmap, who's looking at it, has road markers, turn-by-turn directions, right? Now, turn-by-turn direction, just because you have a goal, doesn't mean that you're going to have a turn-by-turn direction. That's where coaches come into play. I'm not just talking about hiring someone like myself to help you with your podcast. I'm talking about a life coach, and be careful because there's a million of them out there. But if you hire someone who's professional, I would just tell you to find out more about that person. Is it someone who's done the exact thing that you want help with? If you're going to the gym and you're looking for 6-pack abs, you want to walk in and work with someone who has 6-pack abs, not someone who looks similar to your current condition or maybe even worse. I've seen this happen, folks. And I'm talking gym, because we can easily picture that in our head in 5 seconds. But if it's something, that mindset you want to focus and work on, make sure you're working with people who have actually achieved the things that you're looking to do, because they're going to actually help you, and people love helping. So whether you pay someone to help you or you ask a mentor for 5 minutes of their time, please, most mentors that actually have a good heart are not going to feel like the time's wasted. As long as you actually listen more than you speak when you're working with a mentor or coach, take in as much information as possible. And the last thing I'll say is, you do not need a budget typically, as long as you have a computer and the internet. And if you don't have that, go to your local library. There is no shortage of information. So don't make an excuse I cannot get started because I don't have all the information. You can get information at the touch of a button. And don't say I cannot or I can't. I tell my daughter the same thing. The second that comes out of your mouth, you're already shooting yourself down. Say, hey, I don't know the answer yet. I can find it. Go find it. So that's my 2 cents to getting started. If you're already started, level up, be great, be grateful.
Thank you so much, Mike. And as I think it was Zig Ziglar that said, you don't have to be great to get started. but you have to get started to be great. And
Yeah.
it's really key as you think about where you are in your business, where you are in what you're trying to do in life. As Mike said, if you find a life coach, if you find a business coach like me, if you find solutions that are there to really help you in whatever it is that you're trying to figure out, there's plenty of people that are out there that really, as Mike was saying, are there to be helping and want to be helping. It's always what's in it for you, what's in it for them. Very often for me, I always tell people when they ask me, how can I help you? I say, I'm on a mission to help as many small business owners as I can. Even a 5 to 10 minute question, what's their most burning issue? Whether or not they're going to be a paying client of mine, I'm happy to at least have that 5-10 minute call so that I can see if I can help you with whatever your issue is. And think about that as you move forward with what it is that you're trying to do. Mike, I want to thank you again so much for being my guest today. I hope that all of you got a lot of value. And now that you listen to this episode, consider going back to the beginning again and listen for the nuances in some of the things that Mike was saying and that I mentioned in our conversation. Because first you listen for the substance, then you can hear the nuance and the really ninja hacks that Mike and I dropped on the show today. So go back and really listen again to the show. Watch it over if you're on YouTube. And until next time, this has been another episode of MOJO, the meaning of life and business. And here's to your success. This has been another episode of MOJO, the meaning of life and business podcast. If you like what you heard, please consider leaving us a review, liking us, or reaching out to us. You can contact us at bgsicoaching.com and let us know what you think. Thanks so much again for listening.